What if I told you that the greatest player of all time, Michael Jordan himself, once admitted there were players who nearly broke him? Men who tested his body, his mind, and even his pride. For a man remembered as untouchable, these rivals were the ones who pushed him to the edge.
Jordan goes down hard and he looks hurt. Oh.
And today, we're pulling back the curtain on the shocking truth. The toughest players Michael Jordan ever faced, revealed in his own words. Some of these names you already know, but others, they'll completely surprise you. And just when you think the list couldn't get any more jaw-dropping, Jordan himself flips the story upside down. First up, we have Magic Johnson, the man who defined the NBA in the 1980 seconds and, for a time, embodied everything Jordan was chasing. Magic wasn't just a player, he was basketball royalty. By the time the 1991 finals rolled around, he had already claimed 5 NBA championships, 3 league MVP awards, and 9 finals appearances.
Most Valuable Player award to Magic Johnson.
He was the leader of Showtime, the glamorous Los Angeles Lakers dynasty that played fast, free, and fun. Hollywood adored them, and the NBA's global reputation was built on Magic's charisma and smile. If Bird was ruthless precision, Magic was dazzling joy. And he was the league's face before Jordan. For Jordan, defeating Magic meant more than hoisting a trophy. It meant proving to the world that he was ready to take over as the NBA's standard bearer. When the Bulls met the Lakers in the 1991 NBA Finals, it was billed as the ultimate passing of the torch. Jordan was still ringless, while Magic had defined greatness for over a decade. The series began with the Lakers stealing Game 1 in Chicago. Doubts crept in. Was Jordan destined to become just another great scorer who couldn't win at the highest level? But then came Jordan's response in one play that would live forever in NBA history. Game 2. Jordan drove hard to the basket, leapt into the air with his right hand extended, and in mid-flight switched the ball to his left before softly laying it off the glass. It was breathtaking. Marv Albert's voice cracked with excitement. The Chicago Stadium crowd erupted, and the cameras caught Magic Johnson shaking his head in disbelief. That single move wasn't just acrobatics, it was artistry, a message to the world. The new king had arrived. The Bulls never looked back, winning 4 straight after that opening loss. When the buzzer sounded in Game 5, Jordan collapsed in the locker room, clutching the championship trophy and sobbing uncontrollably. This wasn't just relief, it was destiny fulfilled. He had slayed the biggest giant of his era, and yet Jordan always carried deep respect for Magic. He once said Magic was the best point guard of all time that he has ever faced.
To me, the best point guard of all time is Magic Johnson.
Beating him didn't erase Magic's greatness. It confirmed Jordan was ready to carry that legacy into the future. The 1991 finals marked the end of one dynasty and the dawn of another. Magic ruled the 80 seconds. After that series, the NBA was unquestionably Michael Jordan's league. Next is Isaiah Thomas, a rivalry so bitter it still leaves scars decades later. Isaiah Thomas, the fearless leader of the Detroit Pistons' infamous Bad Boys, and the man who turned Michael Jordan's dream of NBA dominance into a long, painful nightmare. When Jordan entered the league in 1984, he was an offensive force the NBA had never seen. His acrobatic dunks, mid-air twists, and relentless scoring made him a national sensation. But while the rest of the league was in awe, the Pistons looked at him with cold calculation. To them, he wasn't a phenom. He was a threat one they intended to crush. That's when the Pistons devised a strategy that would go down in basketball history: the Jordan rules. This wasn't just a defensive adjustment, it was psychological warfare. The instructions were brutal but effective. If Jordan drove to the basket, hit him hard. If he soared through the lane, send him crashing to the floor. Make him think twice about entering the paint. And above all, never let him feel comfortable. Jordan himself later admitted, "You couldn't beat the Pistons until you beat them physically." And the truth of that statement played out year after year. From 1988 to 1990, the Pistons eliminated the Bulls in 3 straight playoff series. Every spring, Jordan walked off the court battered, bruised, and defeated. The Pistons didn't just outscore him, they outmuscled him, outwilled him, and left him doubting whether he could ever climb the mountain. But the rivalry wasn't just about bodies hitting the floor. It was personal. In 1991, after years of torment, Jordan finally broke through. With a stronger body, a tougher mindset, and a deeper team, the Bulls swept the Pistons in the Eastern Conference Finals. It was supposed to be a crowning moment, the passing of the torch. But instead of shaking hands and showing respect, Isaiah Thomas and most of his teammates stormed off the court with seconds left on the clock, refusing to acknowledge Jordan's triumph. That silent walk-off became one of the most infamous moments in NBA history. And for Jordan, it was unforgivable. Even decades later, when The Last Dance documentary aired, you could still see the fire in his eyes as he watched that footage. His voice cracked with anger. The wound never healed. And yet, here's the irony. As much as Jordan despised Thomas for the disrespect, he also admitted that he respects his talent.
I respect Isaiah Thomas's talent.
The bad boys forced him to grow up. They toughened his body, sharpened his will, and made him understand that skill alone wasn't enough to win in the NBA. So when we talk about Isaiah Thomas as one of Jordan's toughest rivals, it isn't just about hard fouls or heated words. It's about how Thomas stood as the ultimate gatekeeper, the man Jordan had to conquer to claim greatness. And that made their rivalry not just one of basketball's fiercest, but one of its most defining. Now let's move on to Joe Dumars, a name that doesn't always dominate highlight reels, but one that left perhaps the deepest mark on Michael Jordan's career. If Isaiah Thomas represented hatred and bad blood, Dumars was the opposite. Quiet, respectful, but utterly relentless.
I think he approaches the game as trying to dissect his opponents.
He didn't talk trash, he didn't throw cheap shots, and he didn't need to. Because night after night, possession after possession, he made Jordan's life hell in the purest basketball sense. Jordan himself has gone on record multiple times saying it plainly. Joe Dumars was the toughest defender I ever faced. Think about the weight of that statement. This is Michael Jordan, the man who shredded Gary Payton, outdueled Reggie Miller, and clashed with Kobe Bryant, still pointing to Joe Dumars as his most formidable challenge. That tells you everything you need to know. So what made Dumars different? Discipline. Dumars never fell for Jordan's tricks. When Jordan rose for a pump fake, Dumars stayed grounded. When Jordan tried to shake him with a crossover, Dumars slid his feet and stayed glued to his hip. He didn't gamble for steals or overcommit. Instead, he forced Jordan into contested, exhausting shots every single time down the court. And here's the key. Jordan still scored. He still put up points because he was that great. But against Dumars, every basket was a battle. Nothing came easy. And in the playoffs, that mattered. From 1988 to 1990, with Dumars leading the defensive charge, the Pistons eliminated Jordan's Bulls 3 straight times. For all of Jordan's brilliance, Dumars and the Pistons had the answer. And it wasn't just physical dominance like with the Jordan rules. It was mental. Dumars made Jordan work harder than anyone else ever had. Even more fascinating, the respect between the two men was genuine. Unlike the icy hatred between Jordan and Isaiah, Jordan admired Dumars' professionalism. Dumars didn't need theatrics or headlines. He just showed up and played his role to perfection, a role that happened to involve slowing down the greatest scorer in history. In fact, when Dumars eventually won Finals MVP in 1989, it was a reminder of just how impactful he was. He wasn't only Jordan's toughest defender, he was also a champion in his own right. So when Jordan finally broke through the Pistons in 1991, sweeping them en route to his first title, he knew he had beaten more than just a team. He had beaten his ultimate defensive test. Dumars was a shadow he couldn't shake, but in overcoming him, Jordan proved he could rise above anyone. Coming up next is Clyde Drexler, a high-flying guard whose name was once uttered in the same breath as Michael Jordan's, until Jordan made sure that comparison would never happen again. By the early 1992s, Drexler was no joke, a perennial all-star, the face of the Portland Trail Blazers, and a player with a smooth, gliding style that earned him the nickname Clyde the Glide. He could score, pass, rebound, and lead.
Versatile, he plays offense, he plays defense, he's good with assists, he can score.
Many saw him as the closest thing to Jordan in the Western Conference. And in 1992, the stage was set. The NBA Finals. Bulls versus Blazers. Jordan versus Drexler. The media hyped it as a heavyweight showdown, the ultimate question of who the league's true best guard was. But here's the problem. Jordan hated the comparison. In The Last Dance, Jordan didn't mince words. Clyde was a threat. But me being compared to him, that was a disrespect to me. And when Michael Jordan feels disrespected, history shows us only one outcome: domination. Game 1 of the 1992 Finals became a statement game for the ages. Jordan erupted for 35 points in the first half alone, including an unheard-of 6 three-pointers. After drilling yet another jumper, Jordan turned to the scorer's table, raised his hands, and gave the now iconic shrug. That shrug wasn't just a playful gesture. It was a message. A message to the media, to Drexler, to the entire league. There is no comparison. Stop trying. The Bulls went on to win the series in 6 games, and with that, Drexler's hopes of ever being mentioned alongside Jordan vanished. He was still a Hall of Fame talent, still a great player, but in that moment, Jordan cemented the gulf between them. And yet, what makes this rivalry fascinating is that Jordan didn't dislike Drexler personally. Unlike his bitter feud with Isaiah Thomas, this wasn't about hatred. This was about pride. It was about Jordan's obsession with being undisputed, unchallenged, unrivaled. By humiliating Drexler on the biggest stage, Jordan wasn't just winning another championship. He was erasing any doubt, silencing every comparison, and reinforcing what he had always believed. There was Michael Jordan, and then there was everyone else. And then there's Larry Bird, the man who handed Jordan one of the most brutal lessons of his young career. Pure greatness means nothing without a team that can keep up. In the mid-1980s, the Boston Celtics were untouchable. They had Bird, Kevin McHale, Robert Parrish, and one of the deepest rosters in NBA history. They were tough, experienced, and battle-tested. The Bulls? They had Michael Jordan brilliant, fearless, and alone. The defining clash came in the 1986 playoffs. Jordan was in just his second season, and after missing much of the year with a broken foot, he returned just in time to face the mighty Celtics in the first round. Most expected Boston to sweep easily, but Jordan had other ideas. In Game 2, inside the hallowed Boston Garden, he erupted for 63 points against what many called the greatest Celtics team of all time. The Garden crowd gasped as he hit jumper after jumper, weaving through double teams, elevating over Bird's long arms. Even in defeat, it was the type of performance that forced everyone to stop and pay attention. Afterward, Larry Bird delivered a line that remains legendary. That was God disguised as Michael Jordan. Coming from Bird, a man not known for flattery, it was the ultimate recognition. Jordan had lost the battle, but he had won the respect of one of the league's coldest killers. But Bird wasn't about to give ground. He lacked Jordan's athleticism, but his mind was a weapon. He knew angles, timing, and spacing better than anyone. His trash talk was ruthless.
Bird talk trash to everybody.
He once told opponents the exact spot where he'd take the game-winning shot, then hit it anyway. Against Jordan's raw brilliance, Bird brought an icy confidence, and the kind of team success Jordan couldn't yet touch. Boston swept that series. Jordan learned the bitter truth: scoring alone wasn't enough. To dethrone legends like Bird, he needed a supporting cast, a system, and the patience to grow. Those painful early exits planted the seed of what would eventually become the Bulls dynasty. Years later, Jordan acknowledged Bird's impact by naming him in his all-time starting five. For someone as competitive and stingy with praise as MJ, that meant everything. Bird wasn't just a rival, he was a measuring stick. Beating the Celtics wasn't about statistics, it was about breaking through one of the toughest mental barriers Jordan ever faced. Larry Bird shaped Jordan's hunger. Without the Celtics' dominance, Jordan might not have built the relentless obsession with winning that defined him. Stepping into the spotlight now is Gary Payton the Glove, a nickname earned because once he latched onto you defensively, escape was nearly impossible. And in 1996, Payton gave basketball fans something they had almost never seen before: Michael Jordan being pushed to his limit. By the mid-1990s, Jordan's Bulls were more than a basketball team, they were a cultural phenomenon. Fresh off Jordan's full return from his first retirement, Chicago steamrolled the league, finishing the 1995-96 season with a 72-10 record. It was the best regular season mark in NBA history at the time, a feat so dominant that many believed this Bulls squad might be the greatest team ever assembled. Headlined by Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and newly added Dennis Rodman, they didn't just beat opponents, they crushed them. Entering the finals, most analysts assumed the championship would be over quickly, but standing in their way was the Seattle Supersonics led by Shawn Kemp's high-flying athleticism, George Karl's coaching, and the defensive heartbeat of the team, Gary Payton. Unlike many of Jordan's opponents, Payton wasn't intimidated. He was brash, he was loud, and above all, he was fearless. At 6'4", Payton had the rare combination of strength and agility to challenge Jordan's every move. And with his constant trash talk considered among the best in NBA history, he could worm his way inside the heads of even the most focused competitors. Here's the twist. In the opening games of the finals, Payton wasn't guarding Jordan directly. Whether by coaching strategy or caution over Payton's sore calf, George Karl initially matched him against Pippen. The result? A disaster. Chicago raced out to a 3-0 series lead, looking every bit as unstoppable as advertised. The finals seemed destined for a sweep. Then, everything changed. In Game 4, Karl unleashed Payton on Jordan, and the glove lived up to his name. Suddenly, the smooth, unstoppable MJ was grinding for every bucket. Payton bodied him on drives, fought over screens with relentless energy, and contested every jumper with those long, pesky arms. The impact was immediate. Jordan's shooting numbers dipped. His efficiency vanished. And the Sonics, once left for dead, clawed their way back with 2 straight wins, cutting the Bulls' lead to 3-2. The stats tell the story. Through the first 3 games, Jordan shot over 45% from the field and dictated the pace. But once Peyton switched onto him, MJ's field goal percentage plummeted to 41% in games 4 through 6. His scoring remained, but it was inefficient, forced, and hard-earned. For the first time in years, Jordan wasn't the one imposing his will, he was fighting against someone else's. Peyton himself later reflected, "I made it hard on him, I made him work, and he was right." Even if Jordan ultimately won, the glove had done something almost unthinkable. He had made the greatest player alive look mortal. But of course, Jordan's story never ends with defeat. In Game 6, on Father's Day, the Bulls closed out the series. The image of Jordan in the locker room, clutching the championship trophy and sobbing uncontrollably, became one of the most iconic and humanizing moments of his career. It was his first title since the murder of his father, James Jordan, 3 years earlier. For Jordan, the victory was more than basketball, it was personal healing. Years later, when The Last Dance aired, producers showed Jordan a clip of Peyton claiming that he had slowed him down. Jordan chuckled, leaned back in his chair, and dismissed the idea with a wave. It was classic MJ bravado. But here's the reality. Deep down, Jordan respected Peyton's fight. Privately, he admitted Peyton's defense was one of the toughest battles he ever faced. Gary Payton didn't dethrone Michael Jordan. He didn't stop the Bulls' dynasty. But for one fleeting stretch in June 1996, he did what so few ever managed. He forced the greatest player in history to struggle, to sweat, and to grind. And in doing so, the glove etched his name forever into the mythology of Michael Jordan's career. And finally, we arrive at Dominique Wilkins, the human highlight film. A man who may not have won championships, but gave Jordan one of the most entertaining rivalries of his career. Wilkins was pure spectacle. His dunks weren't just powerful, they were violent, emphatic, and theatrical. Every game felt like a show. And when he went up against Jordan, fans knew they were in for a duel that blurred the line between sport and art. Their rivalry became legendary in the slam dunk contests of the 1980 seconds. The 1985 and 1988 battles especially are etched in NBA folklore. In '88, with the contest held in Chicago, Wilkins brought out jaw-dropping windmills and thunderous jams that had the judges flashing 10s. It looked like the crown was his, but then Jordan stepped to the line, the free throw line. He soared through the air, seemingly suspended in time, before slamming it home. The crowd erupted. Jordan claimed the trophy, but the duel itself became one of the most iconic moments in All-Star history. Yet their rivalry wasn't confined to contests. In regular season matchups, Wilkins and Jordan turned games into shootout. Both were prolific scorers. Wilkins won the scoring title in 1986. Jordan in nearly every other year of the late 82nd and 92nd. When they faced each other, 40 and 50-point nights weren't uncommon. Fans still recall their epic clash in 1990, when Jordan dropped 36 and Wilkins countered with 41 inches, a breathtaking duel. Jordan later admitted that Dominique pushed him to be more creative, and that their rivalry wasn't just about scoring points, it was a competition in creativity itself.
We were fierce competitors in a field of creativity.
It wasn't just about outscoring him, it was about outshining him. Wilkins forced Jordan to bring flair, artistry, and a sense of performance to his game. Together, they elevated basketball into theater. Though Wilkins never reached the finals and never claimed a championship, his rivalry with Jordan gave fans pure joy. In many ways, Wilkins was Jordan's mirror, another high-flying showman who represented the fun, fearless side of the game. In the end, Dominique Wilkins may not have the rings, but his legacy endures as one of the few players who could stand across from Michael Jordan and make the contest feel like an event. Their battles defined the word highlight and reminded the world that sometimes greatness isn't measured only in trophies, but in unforgettable moments. So there you have it, the toughest players Michael Jordan himself revealed. Magic Johnson tested his nerves. Isaiah Thomas tested his pride. Joe Dumars tested his patience. Clyde Drexler tested his reputation. Larry Bird tested his mind. Gary Payton tested his resilience. And Dominique Wilkins tested his artistry. Together, they shaped the legend we now call the greatest of all time. But here's the real question. Which of these rivals do you think pushed Jordan the hardest? Was it the brutal Bad Boys, the cold-blooded Bird, or the relentless Glove? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this debate is far from over. And remember, even the greatest, Michael Jordan, became great because of the players who tried to stop him.